Good evening. I'd like to call to order the June 18th meeting of the Town of Los Gatos Joint Town Council and Parking Authority. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Stephen Leonardis.
Here.
Councilmember Diane McNutt. Here. Councilmember Joe Przinsky.
Here.
Vice Mayor Barbara Spector.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Steve Rice.
Here. At each of our council meetings, we find a distinguished youth to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And tonight, that distinguished youth is Will Forbes, a fifth grader at Van Meter Elementary School. Will is on the student council. He has volunteered for Souls for Souls. He organized and collected over 650 pairs of shoes. And he was honored with a Souls for Souls book, which he then turned around and donated to the Van Meter School Library. He is a scientist. He annually participates in the school science fair. He is a Cool the Earth recycling participant. He's been playing piano for 5 years and plays guitar. And in athletics and sports, he is involved in Taekwondo, Los Gatos Little League Baseball, Sharks Ice hockey, football, triathlon, and fishing. Do you actually have time for school? I didn't, okay. He likes photography and plays chess. He loves to travel. He's been to London and Scotland, and he just returned a week ago from Germany, France, and Italy. He considers himself an international ambassador and currently has 5 international pen pals. He loves to cook and is currently writing his own cookbook. Will, come on up.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nicely done. Thank you. One more time, let's give him a big hand. Thank you, Will. Tonight we're going to adjourn the meeting later in memory of a Los Gatos resident and Los Gatos High School educator, Ted Simonson, whose picture you see up there. I think Patty Hughes, Al Simon, I did not see, did Jack Cody make it to? Hello, Jack, welcome. Are here along with many other friends. We honor his memory because he was a very special Los Gaton and one who was well known and loved for many years. He was best known for his long career as an educator spanning 47 years at Los Gatos High School. During that time, he held such diverse positions as bus driver, football and wrestling coach, typing teacher, dean of boys, assistant principal, and then finally principal. Ted was an active member of the Lions Club, and in 2008 he was named a Los Gatos Senior of Distinction. And in 2010, Ted was presented with a Lifetime Achievement Award at the high school. His life was celebrated on June 10th by his many, many friends and family, all of whose lives have been touched by knowing this extraordinary man who gave so much to Los Gatos, especially to the thousands of students, of which I and my brother and even my mother are among those, who had the good fortune to spend 4 years under his guidance. Ted will be sorely missed by all of us. So we will be adjourning in his memory tonight. was harder than I thought. Tonight, we're also going to present a proclamation on Small Cities Month. Councilmember Diane McNutt, to my left, your right, is a member of the Small Cities Steering Committee for the National League of Cities and brought it to our attention that June is Small Cities Month. We're issuing this proclamation in honor of that, and I will read it to you. Looks like that. Whereas small cities and towns under 50,000 population are home to millions of Americans and constitute the vast majority of municipalities across the United States. And whereas small cities and towns such as Los Gatos strive to strengthen their communities through the provision of services and programs to improve the quality of life for all residents. And whereas the federal and state governments are essential partners in the success of small cities and towns and must be encouraged to continue to support programs and legislation that strengthen small communities. And whereas organizations, businesses, and residents are partners in the success of small cities and towns. And whereas during these challenging economic times, the need for a renewed intergovernmental partnership to support essential public services is more important than ever to ensure the safety and vitality of small town America. And whereas the National League of Cities President and the Small Cities Council of the National League of Cities have declared June 2012 as Small Cities Month. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Steve Rice, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the town of Los Gatos, do deem it appropriate and do hereby proclaim June 2012 as Small Cities Month and encourage President Obama, Congress, state governments, organizations, businesses, and residents to recognize this event and to work together on this day throughout the year to invest in the success of small cities and towns. I will ask Councilmember McNutt to make a couple of comments.
Thank you, Mayor. There are about 9,000 cities with population under 50,000 in the United States. There are about 100 of us that are on the Small Cities Council of the National League of Cities. And I can't tell you what a pleasure it is when I have an opportunity to go to these national meetings and dazzle these other cities with my stories about Los Gatos. We have so many great programs and services to share, our budget situation, our innovative government practices, and then I do take along some postcards and some photos, and they are always so impressed. So small cities are really the tradition and backbone of the United States of America, and I am very proud that I can represent you and all the small cities, and I'm glad to have this recognition tonight, and I thank the mayor for that, for Small Cities Month.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next is the closed session report. Madam Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. The council met in closed session this evening as duly noticed under California state law as posted on the agenda. They took no action, and there's nothing to report out this evening.
Thank you. If you wish to speak on an item tonight, I already have a number of cards, but on the back of the benches in front of you, I'd ask that you fill out a card and turn it in to the clerk on my left, your right, so we know who's going to be speaking when they speak. And we will get to those as we go through tonight's agenda. Council matters. Any member of council have a council matter? I will just remind you that the mayor's office hours will be this coming Saturday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. I'll be in the conference room of the I guess we can still call it a new library, our fabulous library, from 2 to 4, and it's a drop-in. Anybody that wishes to speak on any item is welcome to come by and meet with me. Manager matters.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, 3 quick items. First, this week from Monday through Wednesday, our police department is working with County Fire Department and CAL FIRE for a wildland fire exercise here in Los Gatos. It's testing our emergency notification system, and we're doing a variety of other programmatic tests to ensure that fire services and police services are ready should a real wildland fire exercise or emergency arise. Second, with the warming temperatures, we have designated our fabulous new library as the town's cooling station for when seniors, excuse me, elderly, other people needing relief from the heat are welcome to go to the library during its hours of operations, Monday and Tuesday 11 to 8, Wednesday through Friday 10 to 6, and weekend during their extended hours. Last, I did want to announce that Ms. Christy Walter, our Parks and Facilities Superintendent, has accepted another position and will be in the private sector and will be leaving the town during July, and we've been greatly appreciative of her leadership and support with the council, with staff, and with the community throughout her tenure with the town. And let's give a round for Christy. And tonight's Did You Know is going to be presented by Library Manager Heidi Long.
I am glad we have such a great crowd because tonight's Did You Know is, did you know that the Los Gatos Library offers a summer reading program for all ages? This is newborn babies all the way through adults, so everyone can participate with us this summer. And you're never too young or too old to read or be read to. So little guys who aren't reading yet, listening counts. Big people who can read, read on your own. It's a great program. Our theme this summer is Dream Big, Read. So all of our programs are centered around the evening, night sky, what you can do with a book at night, read a book, bats, critters, all sorts of great stuff. It's really easy to participate. It's free and it's fun. You can sign up online on our website, or you can stop by in person and sign up with one of the librarians. You set your own reading goal. You log your books. If you reach your goal by August 10th, you can come back in and you get a prize. All of our prizes are donated by the Friends of the Library, and all of our programs are also sponsored by the Friends of the Library. So it's a great, great opportunity to read with your family, with your friends, with your neighbors, on your own. However you like to read, this is a great way to do it. Very, very exciting program. That's it. I have flyers that I'll leave on the table afterwards if anyone is interested in what programs are happening throughout the summer.
Thank you, Heidi. Next on our agenda is the consent calendar. Does any member of the council wish to pull a consent item? I see none. Any member of the public wish to pull a consent item? I see none. I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Move to approve this consent calendar.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next will be verbal communications. This is a time for anybody in the audience who wishes to speak on an item that is not on tonight's agenda. You will have up to 3 minutes to do so. I do have a number of cards. And we will start with Patty Elliott.
Hi, I'm Patty Elliott. I live at 269 Marchmont Drive. I'm here tonight for two reasons. First, to thank the council for putting the Hillbrook CUP violations on the agenda for their meeting in August. But the other reason is to let you know how very disappointed I and many of my neighbors are with the fact that we have gotten to this point. After numerous meetings and supplying extensive information to town staff about various code violations and last summer and planned for this summer, it seems our only avenue left is to ask the town council to enforce Hillbrook CUP, specifically regarding the summer activities. Last June, we neighbors raised complaints with Hillbrook and with the town. We met numerous times with the town staff, and despite that, we are here with another summer of violations. Incredibly, this time, as of June 4, 2012, it's town staff that has given Hillbrook permission to conduct activities that are obviously in violation of the CUP. Specifically, town staff has permitted Hillbrook to allow third-party uses of its campus, including by Breakthrough Silicon Valley and other groups. These uses violate the CUP enrollment cap and the express prohibition against third-party uses. In addition, the town has allowed Hillbrook to run summer camps for non-Hillbrook enrolled students, also in violation of the enrollment cap and some third-party uses as well. Because Hillbrook has stonewalled and then supplied misinformation, and staff is willing to accept that obviously inaccurate information, the CUP is rendered meaningless and once again hundreds of neighbors surrounding Hillbrook lose our summertime peace and enjoyment due to traffic caused by these impermissible summer uses. Of course, Hillbrook denies it is violating the CUP. It claims they are simply partnering with these third parties, and that, believe it or not, because they say they don't have any written agreements with these third parties, it somehow makes this third party use okay and permits them to impose traffic on the neighborhood. Hillbrook has shown that it will say whatever it takes to get around the CUP. Even more troubling, though, is the fact that town staff has allowed Hillbrook to mislead, stonewall, and fashion loopholes in the CUP big enough to drive hundreds of vehicles and a couple of big buses through every day. We certainly hope the council will redirect staff on this point and require that the Hillbrook CUP be enforced. That's an adult perspective. I'd like to introduce my neighbor, Oliver Wang, for a kid's perspective.
I live on Marchmont Drive. I never can play basketball at my front yard. I never can ride a bike in my neighborhood. It is too risky, even in summer. You guys only care about Hillbrook's kids. Who cares about us? Please stop the traffic. Give us a peaceful summer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, please. We're going to ask that you not applaud. There's going to be a lot of speakers tonight, and just let each speaker stand on their own, please. Next is Gretchen Moore.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Gretchen Moore. I live at 16465 Hilo Road, and I'm Zone Town. I, too, want to thank you for putting the issue of Hillbrook summer CUP violations on your agenda.
Could you pull the mic down a little bit closer? Thank you.
My husband and I have 3 children, ages 8, 7, and 4, and they attend Blossom Hill Elementary School. I'm speaking tonight as a concerned parent and a concerned town resident. I'm concerned about the large amount of Hillbrook traffic on Hilo. Hillbrook traffic is not limited to Marchmont Drive. It affects other neighboring streets, including Hilo, Englewood, Topping, Shannon, and Kennedy. More than 1/3 of Hillbrook traffic funnels down Hilo Road and then clogs a narrow one-lane cut through to Marchmont. Hilo Road is a typical street in our Kennedy North neighborhood. It lacks sidewalks and bike lanes and is busy throughout the day with bikers and pedestrians. I walk my 3 children to and from school every day. Along the way, we meet other parents doing the same, students walking, biking, and scooting to Fisher, as well as neighborhood residents exercising or walking their dogs, and families walking to Blossom Hill Park. More than any other drivers down our street, Hillbrook drivers seem to be in a rush to get their kids to school, and then after drop-off are in a rush to get elsewhere. Those drivers are frequently inattentive and speeding, while our children walk, bike, and scoot down the street, unprotected by bike lanes and sidewalks. Hillbrook recently conducted a survey of Hillbrook families. In this survey, Hillbrook families that could walk to school stated they do not walk because they too feel the neighborhood streets are not safe. Summer should be a time of peace and quiet in our neighborhoods. School is out, children are outside playing. Last summer, Hillbrook had more than 900 campers, and the resulting traffic throughout the day and into the evening made our streets hazardous for our children. Town staff sets a dangerous precedent when it gives Hillbrook permission to run summer programs that are not allowed in its current CUP. Los Gatos United School District rotates its summer programs among its elementary schools to give surrounding neighborhoods a traffic reprieve, and these programs end at noon. No such thing will happen for our neighborhood. Hillbrook summer programs have drop-off and pickup times throughout the day from 8:25 in the morning to 4:30 in the afternoon, with staff traffic before and after those times. The 2001 CUP was put in place to protect us from excessive traffic, but unless it is enforced, we are left at the mercy of Hillbrook's repeated violation. Would all of the adults who are here tonight, who are concerned about traffic and safety in our neighborhoods, please stand? And if you are standing, please raise your hands. Members of the council and town staff, this is just a small representation of Los Gatos Cats, and we are very concerned about how you will address the Hillbrook traffic situation. You are the voice for me, your town resident, and I urge you to enforce Hillbrook's current CUP. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathleen Willie.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Willie, and I'm here tonight with my husband Mark and our very active 2.5-year-old twin boys. We've lived at 135 Cardinal Lane since Thanksgiving 2010. We moved from Almaden and searched long and hard for the perfect location in Los Gatos to raise our boys. We're very happy with where we live. It's a lovely neighborhood of families, people walking dogs, riding bikes, etc., which is why we're here tonight to ask you to enforce the conditional use permit the town allows Hillbrook School to operate under. We are well aware of the Hillbrook rush hours, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon before we moved in, but we accepted that the conditional use permit for Hillbrook had been here longer than us. However, we were very surprised in our first summer here last year when we expected to have a very quiet, relaxing summer, only to be greeted with much more traffic than the normal Hillbrook rush hours. We understand that this year the town has given Hillbrook permission to run more unauthorized summer programs. We are trying to understand why our town council is not enforcing the current CUP that you have with Hillbrook, and why you appear to be ignoring the many residents that have highlighted Hillbrook's disregard of the CUP in this completely residential area. We eagerly await some response from you, our town council, whom we proudly elect, support, and pay our property taxes to. On the subject of taxes, we understand that Hillbrook doesn't appear to contribute financially to this town. And so again, we are here tonight to try to understand why the town appears to be ignoring its property tax-paying residents and supporters in favor of the Hillbrook Corporation. Would all the children who are here tonight who are concerned about traffic and safety in our neighborhood please stand? And if you're standing, please raise your hand. Members of the council and town staff, this is just a small representation of the Los Gatos Cats, and we are very concerned about how you will address the Hillbrook traffic situation. Thank you for your time.
Now, please. Thank you. Next is Richard Allen.
My name's Richard Allen. I live at College Avenue for many years. This weekend, I read an article in the Wall Street Journal about a bicyclist who'd run through several stop signs at high speed and ran into and killed a pedestrian in a crosswalk. I'm concerned that the same kind of tragedy could occur in this town. The intersection of College Avenue and Main Street is a very busy intersection. There are lots of cars and lots of bicycles, and both cars and bicycles fail to observe the stop sign, and in many cases don't even slow down. There's frequently tailgating when one car stops and then 2 cars go through. This is not enforced, and I've never seen enforcement at this intersection, and I think it's time to do some enforcement. A few citations would accomplish a whole lot. And one of our neighbors approached the town about installing the traffic light that was promised a long time ago for that intersection, and was told, I believe by the traffic manager or the town engineer, that the traffic on that street did not justify a traffic light. Well, if a traffic light isn't justified, then maybe the citations would help to slow people down, but a traffic light would be even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Next is Jack Van Atta.
I'm Jack Van Atta. I'm representing Los Gatos Community Alliance, and I'm reading a letter from Mike Verga, a retired Santa Clara County firefighter who is on vacation but asked me to read this. Hi, my name is Michael Verga, and I live at 46 Broadway Avenue. I'm writing this letter to address the CUP violations regarding Hillbrook School. Living on Broadway Avenue, I also have endured CUP violations from town businesses with no enforcement from the town. I'm at a complete loss as to why this is occurring. The toll house violations were so egregious, you would have thought that they would have stopped as soon as they started. The sad reality was that they not only did not stop, but the planning department actually encouraged this illegal behavior. It was not until all the neighbors residing near the toll house banded together, got a petition signed, and met with toll house management did the violation cease. This required an enormous amount of time and effort. This effort would never have been necessary if the town had simply enforced the CUP. The town never assisted the residents nor enforced the CUP. The business finally stopped the CUP violations, but only after considerable pressure from its neighbors. Now Hillbrook School is blatantly violating its CUP, and the town is doing nothing. Why? The rule of law is that it separates the U.S. from the third world companies. It separates democracies from dictatorships. It's important to our way of life and cannot be overstated. Why the lack of enforcement? The number of wasted hours I spent to get the Toll House CUP enforced was countless. Now I see Hillbrook school neighbors going through the same agony that I did with the Toll House. I ask you, as my representatives, please instruct your town manager and the planning department to enforce the Hillbrook School CUP immediately. Thank you, Mike Verga.
Okay. I have no other cards for verbal communications if anybody wishes to. I see one coming.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Larry Arzi. I've lived a little while here in Los Gatos. I'm here to talk about representation. What I see tonight is what I'm talking about. Representation, or at least a lack thereof. These people, the Hillbrook School neighborhood, want you to follow the rules. That's what a lot of people have been saying for years in all corners of our town. And I'm going to suggest a solution. It is time we consider amending our town charter to from an at-large government charter to a hybrid district form of government. We need neighborhood representation. To do this, we can split the town into 4 districts so that they can elect a council representative from each district. We then can elect 2 more council members at large from the entire community for a total council of 6 members. This form of government is not unusual. I didn't invent this. It offers better direct representation, and it is more democratic. Definitely more democratic. Our current form of government insulates the town manager and his staff from the public with no accountability. By electing council members by district, we have someone advocating for us. It is better to have 1 vote than none. Please let this change in representation be enacted at the council level, rather than force the community to put it on the ballot. You all can do a better job. Los Gatos deserves a better form of government than what you are giving us.
Please. Okay. Mr. Manager, did you want to comment on Hillbrook?
First, 2 items regarding Hillbrook. After the public testimony at the last meeting, I did meet with both representatives of the Hillbrook neighborhood as well as spoke to the principal of Hillbrook School. Both parties have agreed conceptually to participate in a neighborhood facilitation, which we are trying to schedule for this Thursday through Mark Silver for the school and Ms. Elliott for Hillbrook. In addition, in our discussions with Hillbrook School, they had proposed 4 programs for this summer, and because of concerns raised by the town and issues raised, 2 of those programs have been withdrawn by Hillbrook School and will not be considered. The remaining 2 programs that, based on the information and data we have from Hillbrook as well as third parties, appear to be within the confines of the CUP, but we're still reviewing that, would have no more than 300 students, not the 900 that occurred allegedly last year. So we are enforcing the ordinance to our best of interpretation, and that effort will continue based on the information available to us. We look forward to bringing this issue to the council in August.
Thank you,
On the second item, I will ask the Police Department and Parks and Public Works to follow up with Mr. Allen regarding traffic enforcement at College in Maine.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Okay, I have no further cards for verbal communications. I don't see anybody rushing to the podium. I'm going to go ahead and move on to public hearings. First will be Agenda Item 16, Landscaping and Lighting Assessment Districts, numbers 1 and 2. What's that? Yeah. If I could ask you to be a little quiet as you exit, that would be appreciated. I guess I can ask, but it won't matter. Get the doors. Okay, Mr. Capurso.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is an item that comes before you annually to confirm our assessments for our landscape and lighting assessment districts throughout the town. I think, as you know, we have 2 distinct districts throughout the town, and in those 2 districts we have a total of 6 zones with parcels that are assessed annually for the improvements and maintenance in the defined areas. So once you open, conduct, and close the public hearing tonight, we'll be asking you to adopt a resolution confirming the assessment and authorizing the town to continue collecting the assessments in those various areas. And to this point, or I should say before that, we are not proposing any changes to any of the fees being assessed this year, nor have we received any letters, questions, or concerns on this item. So that concludes it. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. This is Agenda Item 16, Landscaping and Lighting Assessment Districts numbers 1 and 2. Does anybody, I don't have any cards, but is anybody here to speak to that item? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. I'll look to council for discussion or a motion. Councilmember Brzezinski.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor, to adopt the resolution confirming the diagram and assessment and levying and authorizing collection of assessments for landscape and lighting districts numbers 1 through, well, I guess, through 8 on our staff report, item 8 on our staff report. That should be sufficient, Madam Attorney? Yes. Thank you.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item number 17. This is a resolution regarding the fiscal year 2012-2013 comprehensive fee schedule to continue and adjust certain department fees, rates, and charges. Ms. Rooney.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. As noted in the May 21st Town Operating and Capital Budget Staff Report for fiscal year 2012-2013, staff summarized the proposed development application fee changes that include both decreases and increases to fees, as well as modifications to other fees, and in the case of the building division, uses an updated fee schedule to assess building permit fees. In that report, staff recommended holding a public hearing for the fee changes on June 4th. However, to allow further public consideration, staff recommended continuing that public hearing until tonight. The report has been out for approximately, or just a little over 2 weeks, and we have not received any public inquiries or any questions from the town council. These adjustments are proposed to more closely align the fees with the cost of services to process and review these applications. Both planning manager Sandy Bailey and building official Mike Machado, who I'd like to publicly recognize for their efforts in this work, are here tonight to answer any questions that you have. I'd also like to recognize Linda Isherwood, our department analyst, who helped considerably with this report, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions of staff? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody? Again, I do not have any cards. We're going to run out of agenda items before too long. Okay, you're not here for this one. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and look to council for Councilmember Leonardis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just have some general comments on some of the items in the staff report, and referring specifically to page 3, item number 2, being that this department appears, the most current data that I read in the staff report was from 2010, and we did an analysis of how far we are behind on our costs on some of these items. And it looked to me, when we add up all the numbers, we were about $1.6 million in the red. This is basically a cost. It's a service to the town, and this department acts as a cost center for the applicants. And I guess, what was interesting to me is item number 2, A, B, C, and D. It was proposed that we reduce the fees for our subdivisions. And I could kind of see the logic behind it, but I also don't see the logic behind it when we are so far in the red with this department. So I'm not supporting or not supportive of that at this current time, pending a good explanation on why we would be reducing fees, considering there are quite a few PDs on the horizon and we could use the revenue. And then moving on to page 5, item C, looking at item 1 and 2, going with the staff's recommendation of the 10 to 12%, I think would be reasonable at this point in time, considering that we're so far behind on what we're actually charging. So that's my general feelings. Everything else appears to be in order. So if Ms. Rooney could comment on
Thank
items.
you, I can. What we try to do is we try to align our cost that we charge for applications with the actual cost for service. In the case of number 2 on page 3A, currently we charge for each unit in a PUD in a subdivision, regardless if that unit is a duplication. In other words, in a typical subdivision, you'll have a number of model homes, and then all the subsequent units are the same type of unit. Now we're suggesting that we charge, because we typically look at that one time. It's the same unit. It may be replicated, but we look at it one time. So we're recommending the fee actually be geared towards the amount of work that's involved in that. Whereas B, anytime you have a more streamlined review process and less levels of review, the amount of work involved is much reduced. You may not need to prepare staff reports and things like that. In B, that's what this entails. And with C and D under 2, now on page 4, it's the same principle. When it's delegated to a reviewing body like the DRC, there's a lot less work required than there is with a planning commission or a town council review. So that's why we're recommending those. And I'm not sure if there was a question in terms of the alternatives. We were just laying out those 2 options, but staff recommendation is to approve as recommended.
Okay. Councilmember Leonardis.
I guess my general feeling on it is, being that the department appears to be operating so much in the minus column, why go through the effort to reduce fees? I mean, it looks to me like we have a lot of these projects coming forward, and the timeliness of this is, questionable in the sense that we're leaving money on the table. I do understand the concept of you're designing one house and you're building the same house over and over 100 times, and why should we be charging higher fees for that? That seems like a bulk rate, so to speak, if you charge less fees for the same design over and over again. But at the same time, when the department is operating so far in the red, I just kind of feel like why mess with it if it's already in place? This is one of the few areas where we do have an opportunity to recapture some revenue, and that was my logic on that.
If I might add, this entire package entails at least a $50,000 increase in net revenue to the town that was in the budget that this council approved 2 weeks ago. These 4 fees that are recommended for changing their basis or reductions are really due to the legal obligation we have to make sure that fees reflect the actual costs, that we cannot charge more. And these were 4 areas we were worried if we kept the fees where they were, we might be collecting more than the actual cost associated with those fees. So we thought, given the other increases that were being proposed and to maintain the net increase to more full cost recovery, that it was prudent to make adjustments to these four as indicated. We'll obviously follow council's direction.
Okay. That answer your Councilmember Brzezinski?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm somewhat concerned that the phrase "the department operates so far in the red," it's a generalization that I think is not in context of how we've been doing business. And I think we have to be very careful of that kind of statement, because the department seems to be very, very astute in cost recovery. What I would be concerned about is if we had decided we're going to increase these fees for the purpose of getting some bottom line that may actually not be justified. In fact, maybe almost an exercise in public gouging. And so I want to say I don't see the issue. I think the issue is accommodated by the adjustments made by staff. We have increased our ability to do cost recovery. These things are evolutionary. If we were to say, okay, we're going to increase fees 50 to 100%, I think there'd be a little bit of an impact on the community. So from my perspective, I can't really accept that kind of orientation, and I would caution us about making those kinds of statements.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Several things. First of all, as this council person has a strong desire to have cost recovery. I do note that we've gone from a 46 to 70% cost recovery. And with this increase, we will go to a 56 to 80%. So there is an increased cost recovery. That's a good thing. I know that there were council members who were concerned about the non-developer cost increases the last time this was before us. In my mind, I was one of those people, although I can't specifically recall. And I do note that on our Exhibit 2, I believe, we have highlighted, yes, Attachment 2, we have highlighted increases, which and as I understand staff, do relate to single-family homes and remodeling as opposed to developers. Those highlighted items do increase the cost, but it's fairly minor amount, and so I would be acceptable with those. I concur, however, with Mr. Leonardis. The decreases in cost for planned developments were of concern to me. The three line items I was looking at was 2, C, E, and I, where the decreases went from 6,000 to 2,000, 9,000 to 3,000, 5,000 to 2,000. I am assuming that those costs are being reduced, but we're still getting cost recovery. And so through the mayor, if we could have a response to that.
Please.
Yes, we looked at the amount of time involved in processing these applications, and again, what is noted here is that this would be relegated to the Design Review Committee, which requires much less process than through Planning Commission or the Town Council. So we feel the cost would be in line with the cost to the department to process those types of permits.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. With regard to the Development Review Committee, there is a request in the staff report to somewhere in here that asks that additional tasks be assigned to the DRC. This is on page 6 of our staff report. And is this the DRC assignment that you were referencing, or are you talking about something else?
No, these would be future items. What is in the body of the report on Section 2 that we discussed is the current process. The ones on page 6 are future considerations, that we could streamline the fees more so with the implementation of the 4 bullets listed on page 6.
So that the proposed reduction in plan development costs do not require a change in the DRC as reflected on page 6?
No.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion on item number 17. Councilmember Brzezinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move to adopt resolution approving an amendment to certain development fees for fiscal year 2012-13 as noted in attachment 1 of our staff report.
So motion, is there a second? Hearing none.
Fine, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1. Councilmember Leonardis. Okay, moving on to agenda item 18, property at 612 and 626 West Parr Avenue. Property owner Villa Vasona Limited, applicant Highland Property Development, LLC. And appearing magically at the dais, Joel Paulson.
Good evening, Mayor Rice, council members, ladies and gentlemen. In March, the council adopted a resolution finding that Highland Property was willing and able to fulfill the obligations of the developer under the existing agreement, and also authorized the town manager to negotiate a new agreement to permit the sale of the property to Highlands. Over the past 3 months, town manager, town attorney, staff, Seifel Consulting, and our outside counsel, Goldfarb and Lippman, have reviewed and discussed terms with Highland for a new agreement, which are summarized in the staff report. The staff report includes a term sheet, which is the result of those discussions, and it will extend the affordability term by 13 years, make the units affordable at lower levels of affordability, require renovation of the existing units and elements of the complex, provide the town fee title to the property. Highland will ultimately lease the property from the town, and it will also require a payment of a regulatory oversight fee of $10,000 per year with a 2% annual increase to that. No existing tenants will be displaced due to the change in ownership. As I said, Seifel Consulting was involved and concluded that the terms illustrated in the term sheet, which is attachment 1, are appropriate given the town's desire to preserve its long-term interest in the property. As a result, staff recommends that the council adopt the resolution contained in the staff report, which will allow the town manager, in conjunction with Seifel and Goldfarb and Lippman, to finalize and execute a revised agreement with Highland pursuant to those terms. And that concludes staff's report, and staff and a representative of Highland's council are available to answer questions.
Mr. Manager.
First, I did want to acknowledge Senior Planner Joel Paulson for his work on this project throughout all the steps. So kudos to Joel. This agreement that's before you is essentially the same to the agreement your predecessors approved a long time ago, though the documents and words will be changed and updated. The fundamentals remain the same with several key exceptions. One, there will be lower levels of affordability. There will be a reinvestment in the property. And the one significant change is this one-time residual payment to the town due to the property transfer will not occur during the next 55 years due to the new form of affordable housing payments, largely through tax credits. That new structure does not allow that residual payment to recur over the next 55 years. However, per discussions with council when this came forward in March, the town retains ownership of the underlying asset at the end of 55 years. And so in all other respects, this is the same or better for the town and the residents of Villa Vasona.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any questions of staff? Seeing none, I'll ask it again. We're going to open the public hearing. Is there anybody here to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and look to council for further discussion or a motion. Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll go ahead and move to adopt the resolution authorizing the staff report on item number 18.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 19, off-leash park use pilot program implementation. Staff report will be by Parks and Public Works Director Todd Capurso and Parks and Facilities Superintendent Christy Walter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you no doubt can tell by the desk item in front of you, there has been a fair amount of additional input, a considerable amount of additional input since the community input process ended and a proposal was formulated. Much of the input that came through the process all the way through last week is included in the council report that you received last week in attachments 1, 2, and 3. Input received since last Wednesday through 3 p.m. today is included in the desk item. Before addressing the process and the results, I would also like to note that the community input process did follow the same guidelines that are used on other development projects, both public and private, including public notifications for those meetings and actually conducting a fair amount of neighborhood and community-based meeting. In our case, it was 3 plus a Parks Commission meeting. During the process, there was a considerable amount of input on both sides of the issue. The concerns of those in opposition to such a program being considered were assessed and evaluated, and the staff proposal that was formulated attempted to mitigate the concerns that were heard to the greatest extent possible. Only after the proposal was presented to the Parks Commission did a significant additional portion of input, particularly in the form of emails in opposition to the proposal, did roll in. And at that point, because the community input process had ended and a recommendation had already been made by the Parks Commission to move the proposal forward to council, all input received since that time could not be addressed and evaluated in formulating the proposal for off-leash hours in the same manner that it would have been as if it would have been received during the more conventional period of the community process. So with that in mind, I would now like to move forward to the proposal before you this evening. So dogs off leash has been an issue in the town for several years. I think everybody knows that. Before this current round of discussion, it was most recently brought forward to the Parks Commission as an issue in 2009. At that time, the Parks Commission recommended taking no action or conducting any further evaluation, so the issue was not brought forward to council at that time. However, since then, interest in the topic has increased, and there has been an increase in neighborhood-based support for such a program, particularly around specific parks, including Bachman, La Rinconada, and Live Oak Manor. I'm not clicking. There we go. So focusing on the current process, Council on February 6th of this year directed staff to bring this issue back before them in March. The Parks Commission, which just so happened to be meeting the following day, also recommended that staff develop a proposal for off-leash dogs as well. In March, earlier this year, staff presented a plan to council of how we would conduct a community input process that would be used to formulate a recommendation which would ultimately be brought back to council June 18th, and here we are. Prior to conducting the community input process, staff began conducting research with regard to what some other municipalities have implemented as far as off-leash dog areas go. Agencies with both fenced and unfenced areas were contacted, and staff conducted several site visits as well. Staff also entered into discussions with the City of San Jose Animal Care, which is the licensing agency for the town of Los Gatos, regarding licensing options as well as general feedback regarding dog off-leash programs, both fenced and unfenced areas. Applying what we learned from other agencies to the town's park system, several parks were deemed viable as for potential off-leash programs. However, after evaluating the use patterns, 3 parks were selected for further consideration for the inclusion in a pilot program. For a pilot program to be successful, it would need to have limited days and hours. Limited days and hours would also have to be identified that would minimize potential conflicts with other park uses. Regarding enforcement, there would need to be posted rules, optionally different licensing methods and registration options are available as well. And we would also look to the neighborhood-based user groups, which I mentioned previously, to help manage and monitor these programs and assist with maintenance issues that may arise. So to take you through the community process, I will now turn it over to Park and Facility Superintendent Christy Walter.
Thank you. Staff conducted a series of community meetings, 3 meetings held on Wednesday evenings at Louise Van Meter Elementary School. We noticed these meetings in a variety of ways. We sent our typical notice to residents within 300 to 500 feet of the park. We also did several postings in the parks themselves to attempt to notify park users who may not live in the immediate adjacent neighborhood. Those notices were both in small format as well as large printed format to ensure that we captured as many park users as possible. We held the meetings in a series. The first meeting was held mainly to gather input from the community on the idea of off-leash hours in general. So that meeting was primarily just to gather feedback about the potential to gather concerns and to begin to gather some information that would help us to develop a proposal. At our second meeting, we proposed specific areas and hours at each of the 3 parks that were identified as an attempt to begin the conversation around what may be a viable pilot program at each of those particular parks. We, at those meetings, gathered the feedback on those specific hours and locations, and we also continued to gather general feedback about the possibility of off-leash hours and both concerns and ideas of support. At our third meeting, we refined both those areas and hours. We brought those proposals back to the public that was at the meetings, and at that meeting removed La Rinconada as a potential pilot location, primarily due to concerns about the immediate adjacent riparian corridor, the proximity of the turf areas to the local street frontage, and a lack of a demonstrated support group at that park. We have received, as Mr. Capurso indicated, quite a bit of feedback both for and against the idea of off-leash hours. This slide summarizes the concerns that we heard both through the community meeting process as well as through email and phone calls. The first concern has to do with potential for incidents with children and dogs. Again, not necessarily isolated to aggressive dogs, but also concerns about dogs that may be overeager, may knock children over, may scare children, or otherwise create concern for children and their parents. There was some concern about negative interactions between dogs and people having picnics. We heard several stories of folks picnicking in the parks where dogs interrupted their picnics, stole their food, etc. Potential for additional issues with dog waste. There was a feeling that having dogs off leash may increase the amount and or issues with dog waste. Interactions between on-leash and off-leash dogs. There were several stories shared about actual incidents or concerns about interactions between dogs that are running off-leash and those that are on-leash and the aggression that might provoke. There was a great deal of concern about increased parking and noise associated with the use of the parks for off-leash hours, concern about increased maintenance for the town, and concern about liability for the town should a dog harm another person or a person or another dog. There were potential issues where cars and off-leash dogs may be a problem, particularly again where turf areas were close to road frontage, and uncertainty or concern about who will monitor and enforce the program. We also heard from several community members who are in support of off-leash dogs. These are off-leash dog hours. These individuals in support of the program feel that there are responsible dog owners that are looking for an hour or two a day where they could use the parks to run their dogs off-leash. The participants of the groups that are currently engaging in this activity often clean up the litter in the parks and other dog waste, and they feel that they have been able to successfully manage the program unofficially to date and could do so in a more organized fashion. From there, staff took the feedback that was received through the formal community meeting process as well as the email and phone communications, and we looked very carefully at the specific concerns that we had heard through that process. We also looked at the current use patterns at the actual parks, when the parks were used for organized activities, as well as what our staff have observed for general use patterns on a non-organized basis. And we looked at the physical layout of each park. We took all of those factors into consideration and brought forward a proposal that we felt had the best chance of success should a pilot program move forward. Staff feels strongly that a 6-month pilot would give us adequate time to evaluate some of the concerns that have been expressed from the community, as well as what additional measures may need to be put in place if a program were to move forward. And taking all of those factors into consideration, staff brought forward a proposal for specific hours at both Bachman Park and Live Oak Manor Park. For Bachman Park, there's a proposal to use 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. daily. That is the time of day that that park experiences the least overall use. And at Live Oak Manor Park from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., a later slot, which we felt we could evaluate later in the morning hours, but also a time for Live Oak Manor where there are no organized activities and there is less general use. For specific areas, we looked at a few factors. Again, what areas might be currently being used for off-leash activities, what physical markers there might be, I don't want to say barriers, but changes in topography that might make for a designated area, and the proximity to both picnic areas and playground areas. We specifically looked at that because of the number of concerns we heard in regards to playgrounds and children, as well as picnic areas and children. For Bachman Park, we have suggested a designated area, as you see on the map here. That area is 0.4 acres. The total park space is 3.26 acres, so this represents about 12% of the park. This area has some natural designation in that there's trees on 3 sides and a path that help to designate the area, and we will talk more about what other signage we would use for a pilot to further designate that area. For Live Oak Manor Park, there is again a setback area that is surrounded by trees, as well as some hills, some gentle rolling hills that are difficult to see in a flat map, but really do create a somewhat separated area. In this particular area, we do have closer proximity to picnic and playground areas, but we have some separation from the adjacent streets, which we are looking for. From there, we took, again, the concerns that we heard from the community process and put into our recommendation some additional factors that we would propose be included in a pilot. The first would be signage. Signage will be incredibly important to ensure that users of the park understand that there are off-leash areas, that there are designated times for those off-leash that off-leash use, and those signs would be posted at park entrances as well as the designated areas themselves. So the purpose of those signs would be both to notify the public that might be using the park, as well as to actually mark off those designated areas. Rules would be developed and posted best practices from other local jurisdictions who have implemented off-leash hours would be used to develop those rules. And the rules would both denote when and how those off-leash areas could be used, as well as the behavior expectations for the use of those areas. Staff would propose monitoring of those off-leash hours. While we are not in a position to place a person at the parks for all 4 hours every day, we do feel that both our park service officer positions as well as maintenance staff could help to monitor the program. We also would ensure that the signage at the park would inform users of a number that they could call if they had an immediate concern or wanted to report an issue. We would also suggest enforcement for the other parks and the parks that we've designated for off-leash during the non-off-leash hours. Staff brought this recommendation forward to the Parks Commission on June 5th. 10 members of the public were present and 6 members of the public spoke on the issue, 3 for and 3 against. The Parks Commission discussed the proposal from staff in great detail and eventually voted to recommend the proposed pilot program to Town Council with a 6-3 vote. There were 3 additional recommendations brought forward from the Parks Commission. The first was to ensure that there was regular report back on the progress of any pilot at future Parks Commission meetings. To communicate the pilot locally to the greatest extent possible, balancing the desire to keep the programs at a neighborhood level with a desire to ensure that the public is aware of the potential for dogs off leash in those parks during those hours. And the development of a commission subcommittee to address both the pilot and other dog issues throughout town. The recommendation before you tonight is to accept the staff report on the community input process and a recommendation regarding a dog off-leash pilot program, to direct staff to begin a dog off-leash pilot program for daily limited hours at Bachman Park from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and Live Oak Manor Park from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and to direct staff to report back to the Town Council regarding the status of the program no later than 6 months after implementation. Alternatively, Council may recommend against the implementation of a pilot program and or direct staff to conduct additional research before returning to Council. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Walter and Mr. Capurso. Questions of staff? Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple questions. First, I do want to clarify a statement that Mr. Capurso made just primarily for the audience, that any of the communication, emails, and so on that came in after, when you said cannot be evaluated, you meant in terms of your staff report. It certainly will be evaluated as part of Council's consideration. So I just wanted to clarify that everyone understood that. Were there any assumptions made on how many dogs could be successfully handled in these areas? I mean, does it work with 10 dogs, with 20 dogs, with 50 dogs, or what happens there?
We haven't made any assumptions to that regard, but that is definitely something that would be evaluated as part of the pilot process. The current usage is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 dogs at a time, and certainly one of the concerns of the neighborhood, as well as things that staff would be interested in, would be to ensure that that number stays manageable.
Thank you. And if I might go on
Please.
to 2 other ones. And then on the morning hours, what about the different use patterns in the summer? Because I'm already seeing at Oak Meadow that the parents and the children are coming a lot earlier, one because school's out and also because it's hot. So we get the dogs out walked, we get the kids out played, before the sun gets too sizzling.
We did evaluate various hours at different times of the year, and in looking at that, felt that it would be probably most successful if we could evaluate a time that's consistent through the year. Certainly this is a good time of year to evaluate those early morning hours and that's something that we could certainly evaluate changing, but that time period still seems to be a time when there's minimal use in the parks, particularly the 7 to 9 a.m. period.
And then my last question is regarding the neighborhood user groups. So at various points, staff was talking about involving these groups in some kind of a role of responsibility or monitoring, but I don't see that in the final recommendation. Did that seem impractical?
It's impractical at this time because although there is some informal organization to these neighborhood groups, they're really not put together the same way that you would define a neighborhood association. So it is not practical to assess and treat them in the same manner that we would treat an organized sports group, because they're not a 501c3 and they can't yet get their own insurance. But that was a component that we would hopefully be evaluating during the pilot program, was to see if there is usage above and beyond what we get from the neighborhoods. That is certainly a way that you can limit it. That's a way that you can put more responsibility on the neighborhood group for self-management and for taking on a maintenance role, much like we're working with an informal group in the Live Oak Manor to become our first Adopt-A-Park group. They're not necessarily a 501c3 nonprofit either, but it's more of an informal group that pulls together for a specific purpose. So at this point, it is impractical to put that kind of obligation on them, but certainly not impractical for us to evaluate and work toward that at some future date.
So since you're not recommending that, it's kind of a moot point, but I would have concerns about that, because then it becomes a private club in some ways, using a public park and deciding which members of the public can take advantage of that public park and for what purpose. So I would have probably lots and lots of questions and concerns if you're going down that road. So I'm glad at least that's out of the conversation for right now. That's all for now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else, staff? Okay. I guess this is why you're all here, because I have a whole bunch of cards. I'm going to limit comment period to 2 minutes rather than the normal 3, just because of the number of cards we have. If you're in the middle of a thought, I'm not going to cut you right off. But I do want everybody to get a chance to have their say. So we're going to open the public hearing, and we're going to start with Glenn Boyd.
Good evening. I'm Glenn Boyd. Lived in Los Gatos for 27 years, and I'm a longtime dog owner. I believe the council should act to preserve the character of our neighborhoods and the safety of our residents by maintaining a long-standing existing policy of no off-leash dogs in our parks. Under the current policy, all residents are welcome to bring their dogs to all parks at any time, with the simple single requirement that they be on a leash and under control. This is simple, safe, and sensible. Additionally, it is my understanding that Los Gatos has contributed approximately $75,000 to an off-leash dog park at the border of Campbell and Los Gatos. And I would ask, is it really so unreasonable to expect the off-leash proponents to use this facility we've already paid for? According to the American Association of Veterinary Medicine, the 2 most common scenarios that lead to outdoor dog bites are, number 1, children running in the presence of loose dogs, and number 2, a person running with a dog in the presence of loose dogs. These 2 scenarios obviously can occur in a public park. As elected council members, you must recognize the legitimate safety concerns regarding the off-leash dogs and deny this pilot program. Additionally, the proposed compliance mechanism that has been discussed of this existing group is very poorly conceived. We are expected to believe that those that have flagrantly disregarded the existing code will now become the main enforcement mechanism for the new code. Although this is an amusing idea, we all know it will not work. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Luann, is it Fleshsig?
Hi, my name is Luann Flexig, and I'm a 24
4-year resident of Los Gatos, and I'm part of the estimated 95% of dog owners that do not support or allow their dogs off-leashed and unfenced. I've attended all meetings concerning the pilot program and was surprised the Parks Commission put through the proposal and ignored the existing complaints and problems that were brought up, which were dogs knocking down children, dogs pooping and peeing, with some owners not picking up after them, creating a smelly, dirty environment that also passes contagious diseases into the ground, off-leash dogs attacking on-leash dogs, and ignoring the advice of expert dog behaviorists and trainers, professionals and organizations like San Jose Animal Services and kidshealth.org info about contagious diseases in the grounds that are used at dog parks. I was shocked to learn none of the letters sent in were given to the parks commissioners, and that the chair of the committee's wife is an active supporter of off-leash dogs. Most were voting on an issue they had little info on, since only a few attended any of the meetings. The two that did attend some meetings, besides the chair, wanted our concerns addressed. I found the whole process unprofessional, since in your town page and response letter to people, you specifically list the address as the address to write to. Why then would this information not be given to every one of the parks commissioners? San Jose Animal Care and Services dog biting human information for 2010, 12 bites, 2011, 28 bites, 2012 through May, 9 bites, with 2 of those bites from the same dog on 2 people trying to protect their leash dog from being attacked by an unleashed dog. This was a family dog with children and a baby at home. California is the top dog bite state, and children make up half of the total bites. This doesn't include dog-on-dog attacks, which can include dogs attacking an on-leash dog. Humans can be bit trying to protect their dog. We need compliance of the existing on-leash laws to keep our citizens safe and our whole town clean. If the town should create a dedicated fenced dog park that would benefit the majority of the dogs of Los Gatos and not just a very small minority. Thank you.
Thank you. Vicki Foley-Boyd.
Hi, my name is Vicki Foley-Boyd. I'm a certified dog trainer, and I'm a 48-year resident in Los Gatos. I feel if the town is going to consider this pilot, it should be incumbent upon the council to not only consider community input, but also consult with experts in the field of animal behavior. It is my opinion that even well-balanced, friendly dogs operating as a group can become overly stimulated, which can result in a rapid change of behavior. I don't profess to be a top dog trainer expert in the field of behavior, so please don't take my word for it. I took the liberty of asking 2 of the country's top canine behaviorists their opinion about dogs off-leash in our 3-acre mixed-use neighborhood parks with no fence. Opinion number 1, from Jean Donaldson, the former director of the San Francisco Humane Society, which is considered the top humane society in the world. Quote, "It is not in the interest of dog advocates to lobby for off-leash dog exercise areas that double as or jut against children's play areas without fences. Such a setup exposes children to preventable potential harm and exposes dogs to preventable potential euthanasia for transgressions. Dogs should have a dedicated fenced area for off-leash play and socializing with other dogs." End quote. Expert opinion number 2, from Dr. Ian Dunbar, applied veterinarian animal behaviorist, of which there are only 52 of these professionals in the world. Quote, "Whereas I think that more dog parks is a progressive step in the right direction, I have always thought that both dogs and children should be fenced in public parks for their safety, and in the case of dogs, for the safety of others." Thank you.
Thank you. Bianca Gruder.
The timer's on. Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Bianca Gruder. My husband and I live in Los Gatos with our 2 small children. I'd like to thank the council for listening to all of our concerns. I did attend the first dog park meeting. I was only able to attend 15 minutes of the second one because it was kindergarten math night, and my husband did attend the third. I was shocked when I found out that the recommendation was to go forward with the pilot program. One of the biggest concerns we brought up at both of the meetings was that both of our children on numerous occasions have been knocked down at Bachman Park. We've calmly requested that the owners of the dogs, who indicated that they were very friendly, put their dogs on leash. We were told that we obviously weren't from this area because that was an unofficial place where you were allowed to have your dog off a leash. We've also been told that we obviously weren't dog owners. We own 2. We keep them on a leash. We've also been told that it's very unofficial and it's just normal for that neighborhood for dogs to be off leash. As a direct result, in a normal occasion, if my children see dogs off leash at a park, they want to leave. And I just don't think that's healthy, sane, or fun for anybody. I understand that the hours might potentially seem like good hours, but I just think we're getting an area where we're putting children at risk. We are going ahead and validating something that a group of people who are violating an existing ordinance, and we're giving in to them. And I just would very much like to request that the council not move forward with this proposal. I would also like to very much request that you do enforce the existing law or ordinance and request that people at the parks keep their dogs on a leash all the time. Thank you very much.
You've still got 30. You've still got a little bit.
Oh.
You
I'm
get
sorry. I will be respectful because I know it's a very large crowd and a lot of us do have children. My point is I'm very opposed to it. I also was not aware when we went to the meetings that I should have sent a follow-up email, and I did twice email the Parks Commission to say, what else do we need to do? What else do we need to do to have our voice heard? I was strictly told that we should go to the meetings, and that's what we did. Had we known that we should have also sent email communication to the Park Council, we would have done that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And I can assure you the council got lots of email. Okay. Lots and lots and lots of email. Jean Leeming.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. I also am a 10-year resident of Los Gatos. I live on Hernandez Avenue, so 1 block off of Bachman Park. I have my daughter, Katie, who's here. She's 5 years old. She's thrilled to be a part of the meeting tonight. She also attended with me the first town council meeting. I have a 3-year-old son, and I have a 6-month-old baby at home who are both with a babysitter because my husband is traveling. So I am strongly opposed to this pilot program. I believe that there is an amazing disregard for the current code. And I think to condone their behavior and allow them different times of the day that says, okay, it's fine, I don't believe that they will honor the times that are not allowed. My children have been sitting on a park bench and have had the lunch eaten off of their laps by someone who says, oh, don't worry, my dogs are friendly, by 2 golden retrievers. I love dogs. I grew up with dogs. We hope to get a dog when my youngest is older than probably 2. I have had my son, who's 3 at the time, was 2.5, in the sandbox, and have had 2 dogs race through the sandbox with about 5 2-year-olds in the sandbox, 3 of whom started bawling and crying and hugged their mom. And I just last Sunday night was at Bachman Park with my 3 children and my husband, and was next to the stroller with my baby's car seat there, and he was asleep. My son was in the sandbox, my husband was near me, and my daughter was on the swings. And a dog who came to the park was surrounded by 3 other dogs who had run over. The dog owners, of course, thought they had great control and were going, no, Fifi, no, come back, no, no, no. The dogs totally disregarded it. The dog came with the larger dog off the leash, went through the kids' area, and that dog proceeded to sniff into my baby's car seat. So I know that they're drawn to children, they're drawn to food, they're drawn to running, they're drawn to screaming. I think you're just looking at a problem, and it's not okay. And please, please deny this pilot. Thank you.
Thank you. John Lambert.
Good evening. John Lambert. I live on Ellenwood Avenue, just around the corner from Buckman Park. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I spend a lot of time in that park and the other parks in the town. I have a 3-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter. I'm a member of the Los Gatos Parks Commission, but I'm here speaking as an individual. I attended all 3 community meetings. My 2 key observations were, firstly, I felt that there was a majority of people against the pilot. Secondly, it definitely felt that staff were going ahead with a pilot regardless of community sentiment. I've tried to do my own research. I've talked to as many residents as I can about their opinions. I've not come across a single person that has been in favor of this. I've seen a general assumption that council will not approve this because it wouldn't be safe. I've encouraged people to let council know of their opinions. At the most recent Parks Commission meeting, I was extremely disappointed at the content and conclusion of the staff report, which didn't seem to reconcile with the community meetings. I think staff told the commissioners certain data points about similar pilots in other areas which appear to be untrue. And the commission was not shown any other details that have been sent to the council to support any of their report. Except for there was a petition from proponents of the off-leash program with only 17 signatures, and there was a letter from Vicky Boyd detailing reasons against the pilot. I've gone out and researched and observed both parks, Buckman and Live Oak. I found the dogs were generally out of control, running much too close to other members of the public and children. I've witnessed whole groups of dogs at Buckman run onto the road at Ellenwood under absolutely no control of the owners. I don't believe that parks in Los Gatos are suitable for dogs off leash. I personally cannot support something that unquestionably increases the risk to other users of the park and where failure of a pilot could be bodily injury or unnecessary fear. I think we need to consider more closely a fenced-in dog park, either within the community or giving parking permits to those who want to use the one in the county park that Los Gatos has helped fund. I respectfully request that you please reject the proposed off-leash program and please enforce the rules that dogs must be on a leash for the safety and preservation of our neighborhood parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Dick Foster.
Hi, thanks. I am for adopting the off-leash program. The only thing I see missing here are times available for those people who do have to work for a living. I'm retired, so it's fine with me the way it is, but I think we ought to give some thought to those people who have to get home from work before they can exercise their dog. Two, I would also like to note that during this whole study of this whole issue, that I have never seen anyone from the Parks Commission at the park or anyone from the town council. I thought this was a small town. I have seen Christie there one time, but that was way before the public hearing program began. So I think it's rather odd that a small town can have its government be a little more connected. Thank you.
Thank you. Vic Farha.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. Thank you for hearing us tonight and considering the possibility of a pilot program for the dog off-leash program. I've owned my dog only 3 years, and I'm at the Live Oak Manor Park. And it is a haven. It's a beautiful park. It's enjoyed by many people, up to the point where I was totally unaware of the opposing views to it. I can only give you my glimpse of Live Oak Manor, and that is, it is a cohabitation of people and dogs. And it's an exercise area for after-school children, and in the morning, between the 2 hours that we're asking, simply 2 hours, there's not that many people in the park. Now, we have brought our dogs together with young children. We've made very sure to do the meet and greet, and we've been very successful with that. There may have been incidences outside of my knowledge, but I have to tell you that I can only give you my experience. We acknowledge the concerns of all the pros and cons on this matter. We achieve to be accountable for our dogs, and that is in retrieving them, in watching them, maintaining the proximity of their boundaries and where they go. Our goal is to request you to consider the off-leash pilot program. Overview it. Just watch it. See what can happen. Because I ask you this in finality, it is the people who own the dogs who are the accountable ones. And I ask you simply to give those people who are accountable for their dogs the opportunity to just allow their dogs to have a certain period of time in the morning to exercise and socialize. One last thing, if you decide not to allow this program, please revoke the $6 parking fee at the gated dog leash park in Campbell. And we'd be very happy, since we donate money over there, that we don't have to pay for the off-leash in the park there.
Thank you. Kate Paisley?
I'm Kate Paisley, and I've lived on Belmont Avenue, directly across the street from the park, for 16 years, with my husband and 2 children. Out of the 12 neighbors directly on the park or on the corners of the park, 9 are strongly against the off-leash hours. I've talked to everybody. 1 did not wish to be counted, and 2 could not be reached. 6 of the 9 of us are dog owners or former dog owners. But it's not just those of us that live on the park that are against it. This is the petition that was sent around, and there's 183 signatures on it. And there's a lot of comments in there, too, and I know you got copies of that, so I hope you read through that. I understand very well both sides of the situation. I'm a dog owner that reluctantly leashes my well-behaved dog, and I've had her off-leash many times in the past. That said, I've heard the safety arguments against off-leash dogs, and I agree. No dog owner can know that their dog is 100% safe in every situation. And it worries me that if we adopt this pilot, we invite great risk into our neighborhood, and it's not worth it. I'm also worried about off-leash hours attracting more people to the neighborhood. Word will be passed and it will get on the internet, and pretty soon the park is not just for neighbors and other local residents, but for anyone shopping for a dog park. People will come back again and again to party, to play, to run their dogs off leash. The hours will be posted, but will the public abide by them? Our small neighborhood park will no longer be as clean or as safe or as friendly as it once was, and it won't much feel like a neighborhood park. I'm worried about traffic, and I'm worried about parking. The fact is, it's already increased. Intentionally or not, off-leash hours turn Bachman into something it was never meant to be, and negatively impact the homes and neighborhood of the park and many of its users. We ask that you act as the town stewards for protecting our parks, adjacent homeowners, and the majority of citizens over special interest groups. Please don't approve off-leash hours, even as a pilot for Bachman Park or for any of our other small neighborhood parks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I can read this one well. Is it Albans Martinsis?
My name is Al Martinskis. I lived in this lovely town of ours for 40 years.
Could you pull the microphone a little closer to you, please? Thank you.
I live at 90 Highland Avenue, Los Gatos, California. I have lived here for 40 years. My kids have gone to school here. I know a lot of people here, okay, previous councils, previous mayors. I've been proud to be a member of this community. The issue before you right now is a very emotional one. I'm a dog owner and a lover myself. I've always had a dog for all these until recently when my dog passed away. When my dogs were alive, okay, and my kids enjoyed them and my neighbors enjoyed them, we had a somewhat different community than we have right now. They have problems. And not only, you know, whether we're going to have a dog park or not, but also a force-fed noise intrusion into our communities, barking dogs. We're talking about responsible dog ownership. We're talking about people, you know, who take care of their dogs, okay, on both sides of the aisle. And I really commend those people who love their dogs, take care of them, and also care for their neighbors, how they get affected by them. People with children have a legitimate reason to be concerned, because dogs will do 3 things. They'll bark, they'll bite, and they'll defecate whenever they feel like it, and anywhere. And I think many of us have noticed or have been exposed to or have heard about, you know, these things. Dogs are animals. They're our best friends. We love them, okay, but still they are animals, okay, and they need to be controlled. Now, a responsible dog owner will control his or her dog. An irresponsible, okay, will not care, okay, about how it affects the neighbors, whether he lives next to the park or across the fence from them. I'm going to present to you sometime, if not to this in the future, the effects of force-fed noise intrusion into our community. It's a public health hazard and something that everybody should be aware of. Some of the members of your staff, okay, are already aware of the problem, okay, but this is not the venue or the time to address it. Speaking about the...
I'm going to have to cut you off there.
Okay, fine.
Thank you very much.
Then just one short moment. As far as the park used for the dog parks, okay, for the use of dogs, okay, I may suggest, okay, one of my favorite parks that I took my dogs to was in Carmel. It's a 1 hour drive, okay? I went there every weekend, okay, with my dogs. And that's a good place, okay, for you to go and have your dogs socialize and feel free.
Thank
you.
you.
We don't have enough space, and we'll got to start another dog park. Thank you.
Jeff McClanahan.
I'll try and talk into the mic. So in my experience in Los Gatos, which has been over 40 years, I have had many, many dogs. I've had many people who have been very welcoming, very interested in the dog, very welcoming with their children. There are many people who do not care about what their dog does. As a group, we have exercised our efforts to try and clean up the parks. We have tried to pick up after dogs, not only our own, but other people's dogs. We have picked up trash. We have tried to maintain the parks. I have not seen 90% of these people in the park at one day throughout the year. And the dog group at Live Oak Manor is there every single day, 365 days a year. Those people are dedicated to their dogs, dedicated to the park, dedicated to the community and the town, and creating this sense of community for other people. We have increased communication between ourselves and contributed to the town, and that's what we're trying to do by creating this program. We need to have a trial period, and some of these things that have been said are completely speculation. There is no evidence for them. Marin County has an established Mill Valley 24-hour-a-day dog program. They have had no problems with that. New York City has a dog program for off-leash. We have not even approached getting into that league. I say that we should enter into that program. We should try this. We should find the data, bring the data back, and look at this in a reasonable and statistical manner. That's what I'm asking you to do.
Thank you. Raquel Connolly.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor, fellow residents. I'm Raquel Connolly. I have lived in Los Gatos for many years. I'm a mother of two. I have a 2.5 and a 1-year-old. And I'm at Bachman Park every day, if not twice a day. I'm also there very often before 9 a.m. since my kids get up very early. I'm opposed to this off-leash program, pilot program, and even though I'm a dog lover, I grew up with dogs. Dogs have unpredictable behavior. Children have unpredictable behavior. We've heard everyone talking about all the statistics, the professional dog trainer. My husband is a plastic surgeon. He treats hundreds of children who have been victim of dog attacks. These dog attacks are typically on their faces, and unfortunately a lot of these children are scarred for life. I just don't understand why would we want to allow anyone in our community, not just children, to be at risk for a pilot program. Why can't we have a fenced-in safe area for dogs to run off-leash? We have already a park. If there's a need for something else, I'm sure that we can find a way to have another fenced-in safe area. Children and dogs, as has been proven over and over again, they do not coexist well together in the playground. And I have seen 2 dog attacks at Bachman Park. Both cases, the owner had no control over the dog. The police was called. No one came by. This last Sunday, I don't know if because of all the talk of the off-leash pilot program, there were 6 dogs off-leash at Bachman running around, eating food off our stroller. My children were scared. As of the past few weeks, I've seen a lot more dogs running around off-leash. And I think by having a pilot program and even just allowing a few hours, this will just encourage more people to come in and not respect those hours. If right now we can't enforce the off-leash policy that we have, how do you propose to enforce that everyone keep their dog, and just during those hours?
Okay.
My time's up.
Your time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for listening.
Sue Farwell?
Council members, Sue Farwell. I am a dog owner. I have grandkids that use the park at Bachman Park. They were there today. I can't speak about anything but Bachman Park. I urge you to adopt the pilot program. This is a hot topic. I went to the meetings. For every argument for, you can have an argument against. For every argument against, you can find one for. There's many municipalities, there's many states. Colorado, for one, allows off-leash dogs 24 hours a day. Again, this is a pilot program. It can be enforced. It can be shut down. At Bachman, the instance of these people, of the dogs running around, the area where the dog park is a very underutilized area of Bachman. Again, I can't speak about Live Oak, but you've heard some people here. It's on a hill. It's very removed. These dogs are not running anywhere but in the area where they're supposed to be during the times of the off-leash hour. I would suggest or offer the same request for afternoon hours, 4 to 5 or 5 to 6. It's utilized by people that are busy during the day, would like to get their dog out for a short bit of exercise. We're not there for 2 hours at a time. It's to get your dog in and out, get a little bit of exercise. The instances that I've seen are very under control, but again, as I said, for every argument for, you can find an argument against. But this is a pilot program. I urge you to adopt it. I urge you to look at a potential afternoon hour of 4 to 5 or from 5 to 6. This is often a time when children are leaving the park to go home, to prepare for supper, to meet the perhaps the other working parent that is not been at home. It's a very underutilized time at the park on a Monday to Friday instance, and I urge you to try the pilot program, and the pilot program can be shut down, and it could be successful. Again, it's a hotly debated topic, and we won't know until we try.
Thank you. Kimberly Whalen?
Good evening. My name is Kimberly Whelan. I've lived in the Live Oak Manor for 9 years. And there's a couple of things I'm not hearing tonight. One is I'm wondering why it's the dog's right. Owners have bought these dogs knowing there's a leash law. And so why is it their right to have the park as use? And the other thing is, in looking at the pictures that were presented tonight, Live Oak Park is surrounded by homes. All those yards face the park. And there are neighbors who have dogs that are fenced in that are provoked by the dogs that are running off leash in the park. And so that increases the noise both in the neighborhood, the neighboring yards, as well as within the park. And the yelling and the screaming to contain the dogs in the park. And so I wanted to bring that up because that has not been brought up. When I look at Bachman, it's mostly surrounded by street and parking. Live Oak is not. All of our homes back up. The smell of the feces that people allow their dogs to poop in the surrounding areas, all the fences by the homes. And so we have to constantly smell dog poop. So they think because they're not pooping out in the grass, it's okay, but they poop in the ivy and alongside the paths, and that's okay to leave it there. And the last thing I want to say tonight, what's really disturbing, is the lack of enforcement by Los Gatos by these laws, not only in Hillbrook, the people who are here tonight, but also on the several occasions I've called at Live Oak, there's never been anyone come to enforce the law. So it seems there's a trend here in Los Gatos not to enforce the laws that are for the safety of the citizens here, the people, the kids, the families in the surrounding areas. And that's very disturbing to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Bradbury?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Town Council.
Could you pull the microphone?
Thank you very much for listening to our comments and concerns. My name is Paul Bradbury, and I've been a resident of Los Gatos for over 10 years. Recently, 4 years ago, I purchased a champion bred Irish setter, and we are training her to get her championship, etc. I have tried fenced-in dog parks, and they don't work in terms of giving dogs the full exercise that they really need and require. I was referred to Live Oak Park recently, and in the many times that I've been there, I was greeted by a small group of very attentive, very concerned dog owners, unlike the owners in the other 2 dog parks in the area that I've been to many times. They don't pay any attention to their dogs, and frequently there are incidents in the fenced-in areas. My experience of being at Live Oak, which has been frequent, is that our group is very attentive and very concerned with our dogs and not creating a problem. It seems that for these people here whose concerns and fears I respect, one solution might be that we would agree to leash up our dogs whenever we see a child. Frankly, whenever I've been there, there have been very, very few, no children most of the time. Even in the evenings, that park is not used that much. So I think that's a concern, that's a factor that you all ought to consider. I would urge members of the council to come just for 10 minutes or 15 minutes and just observe what's going on at Live Oak. I understand there are more problems over at Bachman apparently than Live Oak, but this Live Oak Park is being run very conscientiously and with little incident. So I urge you to consider the adoption of this trial program. We can make it work. We'll cooperate with the people that have concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. I think before we go on to the last number of speakers, we're going to take a short break, give everybody a chance to stretch their legs. So we'll take 10 minutes, and then we'll reconvene. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. We're going to continue with public comment, as a few more cards have drifted in as well. Next will be Amy Despars.
Hi, my name's Amy Despars, and I've actually lived in Los Gatos my whole life. I'm a teacher in the community, a very active citizen here in the community. As a matter of fact, I am heading up the pilot program for Live Oak Manor Park. So I'm here concerned about this because we are piloting this program. It is in an effort to save the town money through neighbors' donations to buy plants, benches, refill the dog waste bags, and whatever else is needed to our park. Not only have we raised over $700 towards the park, we have had 2 neighborhood cleanup days because there isn't enough funding for our parks to be maintained. Why am I telling you all this? Because this is a neighborhood park surrounded by many families with children who frequent the park on a regular basis. I know some of the dog people. I see them from my second-story window. Yes, they are respectful, but they're a small few, and they're there at the same time. And yes, they've made friends through themselves, but what's going to happen when it is open to everyone else? And actually, as a matter of fact, we already have the reputation of being a dog park. People are getting out of their cars and they're saying, oh, we've stopped them and said, this isn't a dog park. Oh, yes, it's an off-leash dog park. We can come here. So without it even being a pilot program, we've already gotten this reputation, and I have seen the increase of people walking through. And I am worried for the kids. And to be honest, parents aren't taking their kids there as much as they used to. And I mean, I hear it. I work in my backyard constantly in the garden, so I know what's going on back there. Our homes back up to this park, and we hear the off-leash dogs running amok, causing neighbors' dogs to bark at all hours of the night. The other morning, 6:30 a.m., I had to yell out the window to the lady to leash her dog because she was causing all the dogs to bark. My daughter was pounced upon by an off-leash dog at a young age. Many other incidences, for example, people coming from out of the town, from Campbell, that was that last bite at Live Oak Manor, was a Campbell resident. This is a family park meant for children. Los Gatos Parks and Recs, along with various soccer sports leagues, use the park. If you look at the other dog parks, they are designed for dogs, not for children.
I'm going to have to cut you off there.
You know what I'd wish, I'm just going to recommend this, is when we're going to have a meeting and it's a 2-minute limit, to let us know prior so that we can adjust what our priorities are before we get here. So I'm just asking that for the future. So I'm just hoping that you vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Felicia Woodleaf.
Hi,
I have lived in Los Gatos my whole life. I have 3 small children, and we have a puppy. I recently just met the dog group at Live Oak Manor, and we've taken our dog. There's been no bias on who can join. They just say as long as you can keep your dog under control and make sure they're not going to hurt anyone. Everyone is worried about the kids getting hurt. My kids have personally been hurt more on that playground by other kids than by any of the animals. And how are we to know what's going to happen until we try it? So for the kids, yeah, you need to teach your kids, don't approach a dog without an owner or someone there to guide you. Same thing with dogs. If they get too close to the kids, I've personally seen them run over, get their dog, leash them, make sure that it's okay, and introduce them to the child. My daughter Callie was afraid of the dogs when we first started, and she walks right up to them now and is totally fine. So I think that we should do off-leash hours at the park in a specific time frame. We go to the park every single day. I have 4 neighborhood kids on my street that I take. We're the only kids in the park about 90% of the time during the dog park hours. So maybe you guys should go check it out. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Rob Renning.
Thank you, Mayor Rice, council members. I'm Rob Rennie. I'd like to take a moment to frame the problem and give my assessment, although I should note that my assessment does not necessarily reflect the position of the commission. And it's a difficult problem, and I've got, I guess, 4 areas that I think are most significant to consider. But first, how did we get here? For many years, we've had people using the park off-leash. We've have groups that come together, neighborhood groups come together as social groups to exercise their dogs and as a social group. We also have people that come during other hours of the day. The social group, from my observation, are a courteous group that try to control their dogs, leash them or grab them when kids come through. They pick up more than their share of poop. We've heard lots of complaints about dogs that knock down kids and the poop that's not cleaned up. And I think what ends up happening is during these other all day long people that kind of stroll through, and I have seen people that come through with dogs off leash and they let them run through the play areas and that are less courteous. I'm not going to say everybody that doesn't come at this time isn't courteous, but some of the less courteous people are not in this group. So I see this program potentially as helping to solve some of the problem if we can pull people into the hours and get the people that are courteous to help. I'm going to have to go faster here. So first one. Second, large majority of the people that are against the program don't want the park to become more used than it is. So if we had a program that increased at all the number of people, that would be bad. I'd say I've seen people that bring their dogs off leash vote against the program, so I'd say that's a huge one. We cannot allow the parks to be more used no matter what we do. A lot of people will be against that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Walker.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. I'm Sarah Walker. I live directly next to Bachman Park. We are more impacted by this than anyone. It invades our privacy. Those people will be outside my bedroom windows and my kitchen windows at 7 a.m. in the morning. There's already a huge number of increase in dogs off leash in the park just in the last month. I've seen at least 50. I've been charged myself by at least 3. Whose owners just simply said, come so-so, and after they reached me, then the owners finally came up, but they can't stop their dogs from charging people. I really want you to vote no on this. It's a very bad idea. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Hartmut Esslinger.
Hartmut Esslinger from Rose Avenue. I'm in Los Gatos since 28 years. I think from a business point of view, and I think we have a kind of a government obligation here, it's the wrong concept. If you mix children and dogs hygienically and physically, I think it just doesn't work. I think what we would need is an area where only dogs are, like a dog park in other cities. But the mixed use, I think, is completely irrational. Because the risks you're listing Or if this must be a business, you would just stop there because you will have injuries, you will have hygienic problems, and you will have really deterioration of the neighbor's property. I think also that we have dog owners here. You certainly are responsible, but I think the irresponsible are not here, as I see in my front yard every day, every second day. And finally, I also think that the rights of our citizens to keep us from harm and injury supersedes the rights of dogs. It's a bit funny, but I think I speak from my own family because my daughter Anna asked me to come. She got attacked by a dog a couple of years ago, has a very bad dog phobia. Therapy could not heal it. When she sees a free-running dog, she stays in the car. She doesn't want to go to the park. And I think do it like other cities. Have fenced areas, it's always for dogs. Very simple. And then I think we have the problem of the hook. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry McBriarty.
Hi, my name is Terry McBriarty. I live within walking distance of Live Oak Manor. I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old boy. We have been to the Campbell Dog Park many times. It's very difficult for me to go there with my children. There's no safe place for my children to play except for to be in the dog park with me or to be on the Los Gatos Trail. Butcher Park, which is the other alternative, has a long list of problems. I would like there to be a dog park in Los Gatos where there is a dog park for dogs to play and a place for children to play. And I don't think those two things are totally incompatible. I know lots of people seem to think that dogs and children equal death, bites, and whatever, but not everyone thinks that. And lots of my friends at Van Meter have asked me who can't come to these meetings because they're at home with their children and their dogs when the off-leash hours at Bachman or Live Oak are going to start. And I was like, I don't know, Bachman's not sounding so great. They seem to be having a lot of issues there. But at Live Oak, everything seems to be working okay. I used to go to Bachman all the time when my children were younger, and I saw the dogs over there all the time. My children, we were there once a week for probably 2 years. I never had a single issue happen with the dogs while I was there. I know the neighborhood perhaps has changed since then, but I think it's sad that people in the neighborhood can't work things out so they can share maybe 2 hours a day with other people. They'd say the park needs to be empty and sit there so that people can't have an hour and a half or 2 hours. I'd like to see some afternoon time too. Morning time, 7 to 8, whatever, that doesn't work. I need afternoon time for my children. I know a lot of other people need afternoon time too. Why is the park only for children and people they think they're entitled? What about people with dogs who are afraid of children and would like to have their dogs go there without children?
Okay, thank you. Jeff Gruder.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Gruder. We live about a mile away from Bachman Park. My wife spoke previously. We have a 4-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old daughter. We also have a 7-year-old female Akita and a 13-year-old male Akita. They're rather large dogs. We've had them since we've had kids. We've had 0 incidences between our children and our dogs. So why wouldn't I be in favor of a dog park? There's very good reasons. Dogs and kids don't always mix well. You have to be very cautious. We encourage our girls to be very careful around strange dogs. Reason being, you don't know what can happen. I personally have been attacked by off-leash dogs when my dog is on a leash. My dogs have been attacked by off-leash dogs 3 times. Once my daughter got hurt, once I got my hand torn up, and the 3rd time it ended well except for the other dog. I can't even walk my leashed dogs around Bachman Park with unleashed dogs. They get excited, they charge, then there's a confrontation. Those are dogs. Okay, we all love our dogs. But if we have similar instances with children at Bachman Park, putting them at risk is not acceptable in my eyes by any means. We don't have control of who's there, You know, people love to quote, there's 9,000 dogs in Los Gatos. Great. 1% of those 9,000 dogs.
Please address your comments to the council.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
2% is 180 dogs. How are volunteers? We've seen no concrete way to enforce any kind of safety between the dogs and the children at Bachman Park. None. I haven't seen any. So I think maybe we need to think a little bit more about how this whole thing is going to work and the cost of any potential failure. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Stapleton.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Stapleton. I have a 3-year-old son, and I own 2 dogs. I'm a dog lover and owner. I just simply want to be the voice of my community and say I'm against the pilot program. I don't want to take up any more time. Just want to say I'm against the program.
Thank you. Isabella Rennie.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and council members.
Please pull the microphone. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Just a few words. I am a proponent of pilot program, but as I've watched the public hearing and the meeting and reaction people have, it's obvious to me that the staff has done a wonderful job in trying to identify the safest time during the day where there is really no interaction between dogs and children, and yet there is still the fear is there. It's not obviously a perfect solution. So what I would like to suggest that maybe we can go back to the drawing board and consider some other options, maybe look a little more at the different cities, look at our parks. Maybe there is a possibility to do something with a fenced park because we have people that are neighbors, they've been friends, and this issue is becoming very confrontational. I think we can find a little better solution than what we have right now as a pilot. But I would like to say thank you to staff because they've done a wonderful job and they went through all this meeting, and it's quite exhausting. A couple of members from our group who are elderly, they couldn't even make it today because they're so upset, and it's quite upsetting. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other cards. Is there anybody else who wishes? Okay. You turned in a card. Well, I missed it or it didn't get to me, but please come forward and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Harry Campbell. Well, Mayor and Council, my name is Harry Campbell, and I'm a 40-year resident of the town, and I've spent thousands and thousands of hours in our parks with my children and now with my grandchildren. And I'm really against this proposal because I think the use of a particular piece of property with grass on it is incompatible between dogs and children. If the dogs are there for 2 hours, you know what happens. And then the children are there for the next 10 or 12 hours. They're rolling around in the grass, and it's just not a pleasant thing to contemplate. Got a few other comments on this thing. I think the plan is woefully inadequate. It doesn't address a lot of issues that I think should be addressed in any plan. And the most ridiculous, in my opinion, is the self, protection of or enforcement of the laws and the regulations that'll surround this thing. It just won't happen. I mean, somebody arrives in a pickup truck with 3 pit bulls and they're out open area and they're not doing their job controlling those dogs. Nobody's going to go up against them. It'd be just insane. So I don't think that this really is a well thought out plan. I'm not against dogs in our parks. I think that's fine. Dog owners have a right to have some access to the park. But if we do this, we ought to have an enclosed area with a 4-foot fence and a double gate, and that just dedicated to the dog owners, and they can let their dogs run all over. It'll keep children out and dogs in, and that's the important thing. I just want to let you know one more thing. I understand both sides of this thing. My wife was bitten by an off-leash dog, and my son was sent to the hospital by an on-leash dog. So, I understand that there's risk involved in any of these things. But I really think and strongly urge you to reject this plan and come back with a plan with a fenced area in one of our parks. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishes to speak to this item? Okay, please come forward. Go ahead and fill out a card afterwards and then hand it to the clerk so that we have that.
Honorable Mayor Rice and council members, my name is James Frank Barcells. My father was an ex-mayor, City of Santa Clara, Planning Commissioner, and I had the pleasure of serving from 1977 to 1985. Share just a brief story. In the spring of 1981, Earl Carmichael, who was our Director of Parks and Recreation, at the end of one of our meetings, proposed. Well, you know, some citizens came and asked me, talk to the council and see if we can get a program where our dogs can run without leashes in the parks. So at the end of one of the meetings, we bandied this about, and after about 6 minutes, we came to the conclusion that it would never work. It would never work because you did not have a specific fenced-in area. Now, this off-leash dog area pilot program, as proposed, it's a travesty. It's a ludicrous distortion. It's a ridiculous representation of what otherwise might and we'd like to have exist in an idyllic world. We need to protect the innocent. And all of you, Mayor Rice and council members, cannot allow the possibility of even one negative incident whereby the least of us is injured. You can't do that. So as proposed, you should really consider not accepting it. Thank you.
Thank you. No. Please. I've asked nicely. Please don't do that. Any other members of the public wish to speak? Please come forward. And also, please fill out a card when you're done.
Well, I'm against the off-leash program. But my question is, my understanding is this is costing $15,000 or something every quarter, every year, and can you help clarify that for me? I mean, is there an expense that you're putting out to do this? And I'm assuming it's out of the town's funds.
Well, we'll look to staff if we have questions at the end of it. But if you have a statement, please.
Well, the statement is I would rather see the street in front of my house fixed or the holes in the park repaired from all of where people can break their leg from those gophers that are growing out there and that are coming into my yard. I've lived next to the park for 30 years, and I've lived with it. And I live with them coming into my yard. Now I have the dogs out there. And don't believe for a minute that they're not coming into that grassy, off the grassy area into where all that ivy is, and nobody goes in there and picks up their dog stuff when it goes in there. And after a while, if you've ever walked down the creek trail, down where that dog run is down there, you can tell it's a dog run. You can smell it. And I tell you, it's going to happen in Bachman Park. And I don't want to see that happen. Aside from the fact that it's almost criminal that we would consider mixing those off-leash dogs with children. I just can't believe that we would do that. I think it's extremely dangerous, and I don't want to see it done.
Okay, thank you. And again, please fill out the card. Okay. Please come forward. Go ahead and give the card to staff. Thank you.
How's it going? I'm currently living right next to Live Oak Manor. I am a dog owner, and the dog is a pit bull. It is a well-trained pit bull, never had any problems. I have 2 kids myself, 3 kids, sorry. 1 6 months, and the other 3 and 7. Never had any problems. We take the kids right to the park with us when we bring the dogs. And they literally play with the dogs. They throw the balls with the dogs. They even fetch the balls with the dogs. They love it. They have fun. They never have any problems at all. I'm very approve of this, and I think we should really go through with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, going once, going twice. I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you for all your input, and for those that didn't speak or that are in the television audience that sent us emails, we appreciate the input. It's probably been the most email on any issue that I've received in 4 years. I'll look to council for questions of staff, comments. Vice Mayor? No? Councilmember Leonardis.
Somebody has to dive in first. Question for staff. I noticed in the report it said there was 60 warning tickets issued in 3 years and 2 official citations for off-leash use in the parks. And I wanted to know what instance would you issue a warning ticket and what instance would you issue a full ticket, and which parks were those located in?
Our general philosophy is to educate rather than cite. So the instances where citations were given were instances where there were several warnings given to the same individual, and a citation was warranted to institute a behavior change. I don't know for absolute certain, but I believe that both of those citations were at Bachman Park.
Thank you.
Any other council member wish to weigh in? Start humming the Jeopardy theme. The silence is deafening.
I'll jump in again.
Go right ahead. Councilmember Leonardis.
I'm going to try to break the silence here. I have a pet rabbit. I don't have a dog. Completely neutral on this thing. And the rabbit used to have a leash, but gained so much weight that we can't put the rabbit on the leash anymore. So we put her in a baby stroller and we drive her around every once in a while. And people say, "Wow, that's the strangest looking baby I've ever seen." In any event, you know, thinking of the intelligence in this room, we have a lot of people on both sides of the issue. And reading the emails and all the concerns, to me it seems as though there's kind of a little speakeasy thing going on with the off-leash use at Bachman. And when this thing heated up to about 1,000 degrees here was when it came before us, and a couple of our council members put it on the agenda, and we decided to have these community meetings. And prior to that, it didn't seem to be an issue. Maybe it was, but it wasn't in the forefront. Regardless of which park I've been to in recent past, and I can tell you I go to a lot of parks. Being a soccer coach, I always see people letting their dogs off leash. I don't know how you play fetch otherwise. Now I realize not all dogs play fetch and those types of things, but really it comes down to jurisdictions don't have the capacity to enforce leash laws all the time. They can't be everywhere. With that said, I think, you know, our staff is trying to come up with a solution. And right now, looking at San Carlos, up the peninsula, they're in the midst of a pilot program. And for me, I think we don't have enough information to make any kind of a decision here tonight. We hear a lot of concerns from the community on both sides. We hear a lot of support for the idea, a lot of other concerns. Sounds like quite a bit of concern surrounding Bachman Park. But I would think that the best approach for this thing this evening would be to have staff go out and do some more research on this topic. Also, I've heard a number of people mention a fenced dog park, and I don't know if that's even an option in Los Gatos. You know, coming from a background where I tried to, at one point in time, come up with a skate park location, but nevertheless, you know, it is something that could require further research moving forward, and maybe that is a solution. So where I stand this evening is, personally, I don't think I would recommend the pilot program going forward, even though it is a pilot program. Remember, the meaning of a pilot program is it can be revoked at any time. It's a pilot. But my attitude is more, let's wait and see. Let's watch and see what happens up in San Carlos. I see, that ending sometime in August. And, of course, people during a pilot program are going to be on their best behavior, so I would think it would take a number of months after their pilot ends to see the true colors if they decide to implement a full off-leash program before we even dip our toes in the water any further with this thing. As well as, again, perhaps directing staff to try to come up with some kind of a location for a fenced dog park, which seems to be a pretty popular idea. So that's where I stand on this issue. Somebody had to go first. I'm interested in hearing what the other council members say this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember Leonardis. Councilmember Brzezinski.
Mr. Mayor, I was just, the reason why I hesitated was that I was curious if Vice Mayor Spector had a comment to make, since she was instrumental in putting this, or asking us to put this on the agenda. And I would like to, withhold my comments until I hear.
Vice Mayor?
Well, Mr. Brzezinski is being very unusual this evening. It's normally the mayor who recognizes the vice mayor and other speakers, but if that's what the mayor would like to do, I will go forward.
If you're comfortable, please go ahead.
I'm always comfortable talking. First of all, I want to commend all of you in this audience. There are people here who were against the pilot program. There were people here who supported the pilot program. And even though you had passion on both sides, you treated one another with respect. And so I want to thank you all for that. I also want to thank staff, because the work you did was excellent. The fact that you had these community meetings and you gathered information, you are to be commended. You did a good job. What we have here are two passions. We have a fear, and I can appreciate that. We have a fear of dogs on leash. We have a fear of dogs that are off leash. We have a fear of being attacked. We have a fear of being bitten. And as one person who has probably been through all of that, I can understand it. But we also have love. We love our dogs. We love watching them run like the wind. And we love the camaraderie that we have when we take our dogs and chat with other dog owners. In fact, the business section of the Mercury yesterday had an article on that on the front page about how tech companies are now allowing their employees to bring the dogs to work because it creates a camaraderie. But we have love and we have fear, and those are two of the strongest passions that anyone can have. And so that's why we have this situation here. That's why you are here with different opinions. That's why we have a council up here who, except for Mr. Leonardis, is having a hard time talking to you. And I think that where we are right now, and I do have a question of staff, but I'll get to that in a second. Mr. Leonardis actually raised a good point. And staff had noted in their presentation that San Carlos was an entity that was a city that was doing a public program, a pilot program. And I believe that staff indicated in its staff report that that pilot program ends in August. So I agree with Mr. Leonardis that at this point, pending what I hear from the other council people, we may want to see what happens if San Carlos goes forward with a program after the end of its pilot program, because you know darn well right now those people who are letting their dogs run off leash on San Carlos are being really careful. So let's see what happens if the program goes forward and it's not a pilot program. And the other thing that I have understood from listening to all of you and reading your it must be hundreds, a pile of your emails, is that you seem to, many of you seem to coalesce on the issue of a fenced-in area. So I've been trying to think, all right, so where do we put this fenced-in area? Where is this land? Well, quite frankly, I don't know, but maybe staff needs to re-explore that issue. I looked at the two areas that staff designated at Live Oak and at Bachman, and in both instances, they pulled the proposed area back in to like a U area up a hill on the side of the park. So maybe staff can explore fencing that on a not a temporary basis, but fencing it so that there could be a beautiful fence, which I already have in my mind, that has a retractable gate that can be opened when the dogs aren't there and closed when the dogs are there. So I have some ideas, but as we're always told, we shouldn't be designing from the dais. So where I am right now, as I sit here, is I'd like those two ideas explored before we do anything further.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Anybody else? Councilmember Brzezinski?
Certainly, thank you. I appreciate the Vice Mayor's comments. Thank you for offering those. There's no question about this being an issue that needs our attention, and for the individual who indicated wondered if the councilor went to our parks. I was at the parks all in question today, but until my dog died in March, beginning of March, I was in parks twice a day, and it would include the parks we're talking about here, as well as La Rinconada and Oak Meadow. And I was there because that's where Jack liked to be, and I liked to be there with him. And he was an extremely well-behaved dog. And I always had him on leash when we were near other dogs or kids. And it wasn't because of Jack. It was because of the alternatives that I did not have any control over. And in that context, I feel I have some degree of expertise. As far as I'm concerned, this is an issue that needs to become more completely explored. And the two parks designated, I don't think the solution, which was the solution to attempt to address the community as the staff so valiantly dealt with the input from the community. I think we ended up with an alternative that really wasn't an alternative. I think that the issue is more, how are we going to deal with a question of taking care of our animals, particularly in this case our dogs in this town. I think the end result leads more towards an actual fenced dog park. I think that really is the direction of travel that I'm hearing. As far as I'm concerned, you know, if we were so troubled by the issue of dog waste, then we'd never have any dog in a town. Because on leash or off leash, and there's going to be an issue. So that can't be the driver. What has to be the driver is the way we interact as members of this community. One of the things I've been disturbed by the fact that this issue went the way it did is that up to the point when this was introduced, we consider ourselves dog friendly. We seemed not to have major issues. It was only when this thing started to be focused on, given the fact that there were requests of our park ranger to enforce the rules, and then people felt in some ways threatened by that. And this moved up the ladder to the public dialogue. And I think at this point in time, we probably need to call a halt to this and need to say, all right, are we going to have an off-leash dog park specifically designated? Because at this point, we have lost some of the sense of community. We have now become adversaries, and I think that's really unfortunate. My dog didn't deserve it, and I'm sure most of the animals in this community who are members of our family don't deserve to be now somehow seen as as less than full members in our town. So I'm not going to support the proposal. I think we need to continue to discuss this as members of the community. I know that we do have a dog park that we contributed to over at the Perk Ponds. It's not that far away. I have difficulty with the $6 entry fee. I'm curious whether we can mitigate that in some way by some type of annual pass that we can somehow work with county on, but and then at a certain point, I hope we are able to find area inside town, fenced, secured, that we can call our own and allow the community to have more of a presence with our dogs in an area that we've considered safe and more appropriate to our town. So if the issue is going to come to a vote, my recommendation would be to not change, to not forward this proposal, to continue to study as recommended, but to study in the context of a lot of issues that need to be more fully vetted before we go any further.
Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I have many things to say, so let's see if I can do them in a semblance of order here. First of all, full disclosure, I have a dog. It is the cutest dog in the world, Cavalier King Charles Spaniel named Toby. He goes almost daily to the dog park in Campbell with my husband. My time with him is more at Oak Meadow and Vasona. We have a route there that we do in the morning. I never let him off leash except at home. And we have had a couple of incidents where off-leash dogs have been overly enthusiastic to greet him. And my previous dog, we had an incident also. So I'm very much aware of the trepidations that you have when you are talking about off-leash dogs and how they can affect your dog and your children. You see how I put them in that order? I do have a child too, but the dog always seems to kind of come out first. This is one of those issues where that I enjoy as a council member because it causes me to start thinking and kind of at a base level. So, why do we have laws? Well, we have laws to keep people safe and healthy. So why do you break a law? Because we've heard over and over again that people are breaking the law and doing it knowingly. So why do you do that? Well, sometimes it's because you don't know that you're not supposed to have off-leash, and sometimes it's because you feel that it is a safe thing to do. And we all break laws every day because we think it's a safe thing to do, unless you're the only driver in the world who's ever not gone beyond the speed limit. I mean, why do we do that? Because there's the traffic situation in our mind is it's a safe thing to do. But if you then change the law to accommodate the law that's being broken, then more and more people do it, and it becomes not safe. And that is my concern about the off-leash, even with the pilot project. I totally understand and believe that the groups in both of the parks that have formed this club, the camaraderie that you talk about, that you are responsible and it's working very well. However, it's not a private club. It's not a reserved area of the park for just your use. So if we change the law to accommodate those unlawful behaviors, then more people come in, and that was my question earlier. At what point, how many dogs do you get there where it becomes unruly and it's too hard to handle? And how do you monitor the number of dogs that are there? Well, one reason that you can, one way you can do that is by having a fenced dog park area. And dog park has, I've been on council 10 years, and the idea of a dog park comes up periodically. And it is exactly the same problem that we had with the skate park. We don't have a whole lot of open land, and trying to find a space for it has really been what has held up that movement, because I think past councils have been very enthusiastic about that. So I also think that we rushed this. This was on a fast track. We talked about it in February, and for some reason, I can't remember why, it seems so important that we get through these community meetings and have a report back by June, that there perhaps wasn't enough time to not just talk about a pilot project, but to begin to explore, are there any realistic and feasible areas for creating a dog park? I almost hate to say this out loud because I know it's going to cause some other ripples, but one of the intriguing suggestions that I heard as I was talking to the community is using Balzer, which is, Little League field, but it's only used part of the year. It's already fenced, it already has lawn, it already has parking, it's next to the freeway, so if the dogs bark, the freeway traffic gets it. It's like, well, that's an interesting idea. But again, there's going to be some of the community that are going to be horrified at that. So, there's a lot of different options that we could look at. And I do think it would be good if we do that. But I don't think that we should set it up, again, with a very quick turnaround time and expectation. We have a process where the council meets once a year in retreat in January. We set the goals, the work plan for the year. This wasn't on it. It came up like a week or 2 weeks after that. Threw off kilter the scheduling of some other work that staff was supposed to be doing. So I do think that we should do some more research, some more thinking, perhaps have it be part of the discussion at the next council retreat for work plan for 2013. And in the meantime, take advantage of the dog park that we do have access to in Campbell. You can park on the street without paying the $6. If you want to walk just a little bit, it's county operated. It's the county collects the fee. And if you want to, well, I won't go into all of the secret places to park over there at no cost. I won't give that away, that information right now. And what else did I want to say? There was one other thing. Yes, this is the record number of emails, 10 years of any issue that we have ever had, of all of the issues that we've had in the town of Los Gatos. This set the record. So it does show that it touched a chord of great concern for the community. And so we have to proceed very cautiously and carefully.
Okay. I guess I'll weigh in. Try not to be redundant, but I think you're going to hear a consistent theme. I'm not in favor of the pilot. I first want to commend staff for doing a tremendous amount of work in a short period of time to bring forward a proposal that, given what you had to work with, the proposal is logically thought out. It's kind of cutting the piece of cake in half, trying to make it work. And I commend the public. From the emails to those of you here, I'll echo what the Vice Mayor said about the respect on both sides of the other people's opinion. I'll respectfully disagree with Ms. McNutt because Kimmy, my 10-and-a-half-year-old golden retriever, is the cutest dog in the world. No disrespect to Toby. Toby's very cute, but a couple of things about this that just leave me with concerns. First, the lack of an enforcement mechanism, leaving it to the neighborhood groups sounds really, really positive until this thing gets bigger. And when you publicize it or make it a public thing and you start getting more dogs, and whether it's 5 more or 10 more or 25 more, all of a sudden the neighborhood groups are going to get overwhelmed. And they don't have enforcement authority. I don't want the public put in that kind of a position to tell somebody who comes in from out of town with his 2 very well-behaved Irish setters, golden retrievers, Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, whatever it is, that, hey, you didn't clean up after yourself. That's not your job as the public. And as much as you may be willing to do it, it'll get old. What we have had over the last few years is kind of a don't ask, don't tell policy, and it's really been limited to the neighborhoods. The people around Bachman use Bachman. The people around Live Oak Manor use Live Oak Manor. And to the speaker who said we should go look at these parks, I've done that many, many times. And it's never your dog that's the problem. I get that. Those of you that are here, you're here because your dog is well behaved. Nobody's going to come up to the podium and say, yeah, my dog gets away from me occasionally, but for the most part, they're really good. So it's the other person's dog that causes the problem, whether it's with your children or with your dogs. I think off-leash, as well-intentioned as people are, off-leash makes it more difficult to clean up after your dog. It's real easy when the dog's on the leash and makes a mess in front of you, you're going to clean it up. If he's 100 yards away playing with other dogs, maybe not so much. I'm very concerned about parking around Bachman as if we were to have done this. I was also intrigued with the idea of using Balzer Field as a fenced dog park, and actually a couple of neighbors of the Ditto's Lane property brought up Ditto's Lane as a potential for a fenced dog park, and I think that's something, as Councilmember McNutt said, with a little bit more time and effort to look through this to try and figure out how to make a fenced dog park in Los Gatos a reality. If it can be done, this council has shown great flexibility and wisdom and ingenuity in coming up with solutions, and I would hope that we could do that. Parking might be an issue with, at least with Ditto's anyway. And as much as I hate to say this, because it's going to make some enemies even of those of you that are well behaved, the cat is out of the bag, and I think we have to enforce the laws that we currently have on the books. So those of you that are well behaved and have well behaved dogs, I think we have to enforce the law. It's not a don't ask, don't tell anymore because everybody's told. So now we've got to deal with it. And when it becomes, so to speak, viral, and people outside of Los Gatos understand that, hey, we're not enforcing our off-leash or our leash laws, you're going to bring in people, and I just don't think that's where we want to go. So that's my thoughts, and I'll look to the rest of council for any other comments or a motion. Councilmember Leonardis.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with what the other council members have said here this evening. I'm ready to make a motion to go back to the drawing board, I guess you could say, and postpone the idea of the pilot program. Not necessarily completely slam the door shut, but just direct staff to conduct additional research on that, as well as a fenced-in dog park at some location in Los Gatos. So that's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion if the mayor would allow me to get some clarification on it.
Please.
Would the maker of the motion include in that additional research, you're talking about additional research on fenced in?
Yes.
All right, and would the maker of the motion then include in that additional research parcels of property within parks and in property outside of the parks?
I think the thing to do at this point in time, which would be fair for everybody, would be to consider all options. As Councilwoman McNutt mentioned, this thing came from, it wasn't even on our retreat, wasn't on our work plan, came from 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. You know, I think it caught a lot of us by surprise, and that's the position I'm in. I really don't feel like I even have enough information here to make any kind of an informed decision. I heard all the speakers, and I can understand the people who live around Bachman, as well as the Live Oak Park, and your concerns. You're asking that we officially change the use. We've had a use of this park that's been kind of a speakeasy thing, which has been going on. But to me, looking at the official designation at this point in time, absolutely don't have enough information on that to make any kind of a decision about even a pilot program. So therefore, I would just want to instruct staff to consider whatever options you can bring to us. I would imagine there's going to be quite a few, and I would imagine, as Councilwoman McKnight said, it's not going to come to us very soon. Probably not before the end of the year. Probably before our next retreat. So, to answer to the Vice Mayor's amendment to the motion, I would say leave the door open on everything at this point and direct staff to come forward to us with a bunch of options and see where we go from there, because I don't want to overlook anything. I don't feel like we have enough information about everything. So,
Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for your acknowledgement of staff's exceptional efforts, and I did want to single out Todd and Christy and their staff for their work here. This was, at your direction, an extremely limited study in an even more limited period of time, and that we brought this back so quickly with so much information and so much community comment is indeed amazing to me. We do face the reality that any consideration of a fenced dog park will almost certainly entail capital expenditures as well as an environmental review. Your staff would recommend we consider that after we have the capital projects priorities and funding session late this fall, leading into your retreat in January. And especially with the staff departure I announced earlier, we will be scrambling for the next 6 months just to meet that capital projects priority session that you've already called for, and would recommend that we consider this further research as part of the array of other priorities you may have for the town in the year ahead.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm supporting the motion, Mr. Leonardis' motion, for the reasons I stated earlier when it was suggested that I speak on this issue, and also that as to why this got on our agenda and why it has been moved along. The mayor and I put it on the agenda, and the reason was that we had a very unstable situation when that happened. We had folks who were allowing their dogs to run off leash. The staff, the ranger, was put in a position of either giving them tickets, which was uncomfortable, or not giving them tickets, which was uncomfortable. And in that kind of unstable situation, I thought that the issue should be addressed. So that's why the agenda item was put forward. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? I will call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And again, I thank you all for your input. And that is the last agenda item we have for tonight. And I want to remind everybody that we are adjourning tonight in memory of community leader and icon and friend Ted Simonson, who passed away late last month. We are adjourned.
you.